Major support for these broadcasts is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, All Nation Renovation, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, Chelsea Lighting, Inc., Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Goldman Properties, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Corming Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Muss Development, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, Triangle Equities, The Wyckoff Group, Urban American.
So everybody likes to go shopping. They go shopping on Fifth Avenue, they go shopping in regional shopping centers, they go shopping all around. So what's happening in retail? That's shopping, that's running around. So today I have a diverse group of individuals to provide their insight on the state of retail in the region. My guests they include Will Silverman, who is the Senior Managing Director at Studley, the legendary Ed Blumenfeld, who's the Chairman of the Board and CEO of Blumenfeld Development, a returnee from last week, Ben Stacks, who's the Market Manager for Capital One Bank, and last but not least, the man who leases most of this property, one of the best leasing guys in the city, Peter Ripka of Ripko Real Estate. So, leasing man, how's real estate? How's the retail business today?
Well, I have two offices, one in Long Island, one in Manhattan.
Which one's doing better?
Long Island does the suburbs, and our Manhattan office does the New York City, Manhattan and the boroughs. And the people in both offices are busy. There are companies that are expanding and growing. They just have to be providing necessities or entertainment.
So who are the people who are coming to, you're saying you have an office in Long Island, you have an office in the city. Who are the new players? Who are the people who haven't been here or who were just on the fringes of being here? Who's coming to the marketplace?
Well, the health club category has been a great category. LA Fitness, 24-hour fitness, Planet Fitness. Equinox has a concept called Blink. They've been taking spaces in the suburbs and in the city. And there are restaurant concepts. Panera Bread's been coming to Manhattan. Potbelly's been coming to Manhattan. And if you provide good value, then those are the companies that are growing.
And it's a good comment because I'm going to have to ask the banker about this, and also the owner. Because we have the investment sales guru over here, we have the owner developer over here, we have the banker over here, and we have the leasing guy, which is a perfect group around here. I've heard that the gyms are coming over there, and one of the big negatives, and I think I'm going to ask you the question on this, and then go to you on the financing, is that the gyms or the health clubs who go there take up a lot of the parking. And some of the other tenants are upset because they're there and the spots can't be utilized for someone else. That's one thing. But then on the other side, the reverse side, is that if the people are in the gyms are there, they can be shoppers and the other retail. How do you look at the health clubs today?
Well, we've done a bunch of health clubs in the last few years. Particularly, we have a few New York health and sports clubs. We have LA Fitness in a few locations. And we brought in a new concept to New York, and they're the only ones in the New York State so far. They have two clubs in New Jersey, and that's Lifetime Fitness, which has been a remarkable success.
What's the difference?
The difference is
A club on steroids.
it's a club on steroids.
Yeah.
It's 120,000 square feet plus 50,000 square feet of outdoor space, which includes pools, hot tubs, lap pools, giant slide for kids, lounges, snack bars, playgrounds, so that people use it as a country club. It's a country club without golf or tennis. They have every imaginable amenity inside.
And what do they charge?
They charge $220 a month for a family. A family consists of 2 adults, 2 children under 18, and it's $10 a month if you have 3 children.
And no long-term obligation.
And there is no,
I mean,
you don't
so
sign up for
in
a
essence,
year.
I mean, you're really getting a very worthwhile bargain, when you compare
It's a totally
different experience.
Concept. Different experience.
Now,
I mean, it's marble baths, granite tile.
are they 24 hours?
24/7, martial arts, rock climbing walls, 2 basketball courts, Zumba classes, whatever Zumba is. All I know is there's 100 and some odd women in each class all day long.
Michael, they bring people early in the morning. So for shopping centers where at one time retailers were concerned about parking, their fears have
So
been a
the
little
6
bit
o'clock in the
alleviated.
morning, they don't have to worry because the shopping centers normally
this
don't open
particular
till
club
10.
is on 10 acres, and it's adjacent to our corporate offices. But we did it in LA Fitness with Whole Foods, with Petco, with Fidelity, an investment sales brokerage, and Jared Jewelers. 100% leased, rocking. I mean, the people go to work out and they go to Whole Foods. They go to Whole Foods, they cross shop. I didn't realize so many people had so many pets, but they also inhabit Petco. And at the Arches, which is 800,000 feet out in Deer Park, we put in the New York Health Club, New York Sports Health Club, on a 2nd floor with offices. So we get people that go there to work out, and then they're shopping. And we get people that join there because they can do both. And with the food and entertainment we provide, it's a natural.
Here's the question. As a banker, in many cases, especially not because these companies haven't filed or had financial difficulties, but Bally's has gone through at least 2 or 3 Chapter 11 situations. How do you look at a lending situation with a health club? Because it's not been, it's not Dwayne Reed or CVS that could sell tomorrow.
I think collectively the lending institutions used to not like sports clubs, but I think the face of them are changing. The dynamic is changing, and exactly what Eddie was saying. I happened to be in the Lifetime Fitness last week, and it was unbelievable. I mean,
which one?
In Long Island. It was
community center.
It's a community center. That's exactly right. I mean, it was. I was stunned by the diversity of the offerings in the facility, the upkeep, the service level, and I think the entire industry has changed. And I personally used to not be too excited about them when I was making.
I think this.
And I think it's
this
totally
is a very valuable information that we're providing because people aren't aware. They're familiar with the Bally's. They're familiar with all of the name brands, but this is a completely different thing. This is like in the suburbs. I have a son who lives in Denver. This is like the Denver health clubs. These large places which are everything except for having a golf course. They have the food bar, they have the other situation, And, if you look at in the city, when Worldwide built their building on 74th Street and 2nd Avenue, they put a 22,000 square foot location over there. I mean, with the Equinox on the situation. when you're selling properties, okay, because investors from around the world want to be in New York City specifically, and they want other things. What are they looking for when they buy a retail?
They're looking for a few things, and there's been an awakening in the institutional market towards retail, in particular retail condos. Number one, they're looking for Class A real estate. One of the biggest frustrations if you're a national investor, an international investor, is if you want to buy a Class A building in New York, you're usually looking at writing a check for anywhere from $200 million to $1 billion. If you buy a retail condo, you can get into a Class A piece of real estate for under $50 million or even $5 or $10 million. So that's very appealing. The other thing they're looking for is easy execution on the transaction, which means not too many tenants so that it's easy to underwrite, which is important to them because they want to be able to compete against the savvy locals on the process, right? There's two things you're competing on in any acquisition. It's your price and your terms. A lot of times the institutions can get there on price, but they fall behind the locals on terms. If there's a retail space that only has 3 tenants in it, anybody can underwrite that very quickly, and they can be more competitive. So that's the second thing they're looking for. And the third thing they're looking for is ease of management. What makes retail really appealing for an institutional owner is that if you've only got 2 or 3 tenants and they've got leases that go out for 7 to 10 years, you're not going to be spending a lot of time thinking about the asset.
Now we're going to take it to the banker. So he sells a property, and he's done a great job in selling many properties, but specifically a number of retail properties recently, many of them with a financial service entity and maybe a food place or something like that. When you, as a banker, look at that, true, it's ease of execution because there's only 2 tenants. But I just heard something that bothered me a little bit as a lender because, one of my lives is lending. 7-year term, what happens later on, right?
Well, certainly, we would prefer to have longer-term leases, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, obviously, that's a lot easier to lend into. But for us, really, we look at the locations and the ability of any expiring tenants to either be repopulated with somebody else or for the use to change in some ways. So, we understand that these concepts change frequently, and we're certainly able to underwrite any kind of changes to that. But for us, it's really focusing on infill locations. And if we go out in New York, very solid suburban, grocery anchored, or high density areas. So.
Ben, let me jump on your point about locations, because by way of example, we recently went to contract on a retail piece on 83rd and Broadway. And the piece has been there for 25 years. That's how long ago the building was built. In those 25 years, there's 3 stores. Each of the stores has been vacant for a total of 4 months. So when the lenders are looking at a property like that, they can look at a history where in 25 years, that's a month a decade practically, of vacancy. So it's not so much about the term, but they love the location.
But it's a tale of 2 cities. And Peter will say to you, Broadway, everybody wants. The Upper West Side, if you can find property on the Upper West Side from 60th Street to 86th Street, you'll rent it, right,
Tight.
Peter?
That's correct.
Now,
the question is, at what rent?
At what rent is one question, and the other question is, now let's go to the East Side. You go to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Avenue. You go to 2nd Avenue, they have, we would, as I always joke, for my Jewish people, it's sitting Shiva. For my Catholic people, it's being at a wake. 2nd Avenue retail, because of the 2nd Avenue subway, is terrible.
It's a noisy wake.
It's
From an owner's point of view, 4 months out of 25 years, I don't think they were asking enough.
That's probably true. I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, I'd
But you
rather
get
have
that
it vacant a
sometimes.
little bit more and get a higher rent.
You get that sometimes. You get owners that just want to renew with their existing tenants.
And in
Even
several
if-
cases,
even
they
if
knew a
it's at
year in
less
advance that
rent.
they were getting the space back, so the space might have been available and on the market while it wasn't.
Here's a question which relates, and I think of Broadway and 83rd. It might be there. A couple years ago, the movie business, everybody followed Chapter 11, and ironically, one of the biggest private equity who was on my panel last week, Carlisle, is behind AMC theaters. In this situation, you have Regal, which I believe is AMC, Regal, and
No,
everywhere.
it's United, Edwards, and
Regal.
Regal.
Right. So how are the movie theaters in the suburbs doing today?
Phenomenal. We have 3. the latest one that we built, again at the Arches, where we combined retail and entertainment and food. It's the largest grossing IMAX on Long Island.
And it's like the health club, because at one time they weren't perceived necessarily as a good complement in a shopping center, and now they're a great complement to a shopping center.
Yeah.
If it's designed right, if the
We
parking.
found that, well, we had 10 million visitors last year in a complex that, well, Peter leased it, but everybody said, you're nuts.
You let Peter lease it?
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
God.
you know,
We helped.
you have Rachmanin's.
I realize.
So
We helped.
we,
They did a great job building it.
we decided that we were going to do something a little different, and that was combined office, entertainment, food, and regular retail and outlet retail.
Now, but the difference of what you did in the Arches is you didn't make it like a true lifestyle center, which in New York City or in the region has been a failure. I mean, what happened in Queens was a nightmare.
Right,
You
well,
know,
that was
poorly
ill-conceived.
designed.
that was poorly designed.
That was
but yours is more than a lifestyle center. The traditional lifestyle center, which has not done that well, you know, has the Chico, you know, two other stores, you know,
Black-
the kitchen,
White House Black Market. and
White House, and then
Williams-Sonoma.
Williams-Sonoma, and then they also always California Pizza or somebody like that. You know, was
Well, there were too many that were built in the country.
right.
There are good ones.
Right. Now, let's talk about Harlem. I mean, the first one was Grid, you know, when they built, you know, the property on 125th Street. And the second one, and it took a couple years, you know, that's New York City but how's East River Plaza doing today?
Great. I think that it became a welcome addition to the community. I think it serves a purpose. It brought value. We're seeing tremendous traffic all week. Weekends is out of sight. During the week, depending upon the day that you go there, you're going to find a different group of shoppers. In the summertime, Thursdays and Thursday nights, you find a lot of East Siders and West Siders that are going up to the country or out to the Hamptons, loading up. Thursday evenings, you find a lot of religious Jewish people who are going there to buy kosher food. And Monday to Thursday and the weekends, we have a Muslim community that comes to buy kosher foods.
And we're over 95% leased.
And we're over 95% leased. And we're selling staples, and we're selling designer brand Madison Avenue named.
And you have a Petco.
And we have Petco, and we
That's smart.
sell
That's smart.
bags, and we sell diamond ring. Well, Costco's selling, not we,
But
diamond rings
yeah,
to
but
$250,000.
you know what's very interesting, and you did bring up the fact, in addition to what you've done over there, when you go the block before, when I drive up there, they opened up a much higher braided Benjamin Moore paint,
Correct.
and they also opened up a liquor store.
Correct.
You know, a wine and spirit store, which I was going to say, you know, Ripka, how come you didn't you got 14,000 square feet, like Costco has done in Long Island and a variety of others. It would be a perfect place for a liquor
There are
store.
licensing issues with.
Oh, yes.
those guys.
Number one, there are licensing issues. Number two, when we started this project, which was right after the Civil War, there was an image problem, and it was we took prospective tenants up there, and they said, "Are we okay? Are we safe? Are we this?" I mean, Peter and I and David and when we went up there, we had to overcome a lot. And today, you're looking at something that they weren't willing to take
Eddie,
advantage of.
You know, we've been together a number of years. I still remember when you guys went on 125th Street, across the street from the Pathmark. It took them years to be at the Pathmark, and you did motor vehicles, and you did a couple of stores, and a Bank of America branch, and so on.
Right.
You know, it was Fleet at that time. You know what? The world has changed. Harlem has changed, and, you know, different markets. I mean, how does somebody, you know, you talk about, you know, the financial services otherwise, how does investors look if there's a food place?
It's going to depend on whether or not it's national. I mean, an institutional investor is going to be much more comfortable underwriting a national chain that has some level of credit than they're going to be comfortable with a local mom and pop. That said, if the local mom and pop is some sort of local institution that has a long history of paying their rent successfully, it's probably something they could get comfortable with if, to the earlier point, it's at the right
So
location.
my question is, if it's a Brinker, who happens to have a lot of major chains, or it's an Applebee's, like Tankel's Apple Core over there, who has an established record, you think
It's going to be credit driven.
it's credit driven?
It's going to be credit driven.
We were talking before about the number of how many more Dwayne Reeds, Walgreens, CVS's, and Rite Aids do I need to see? And you just said it's happening all the time.
It's not going away either. They provide necessities, and these companies have strong balance sheets, and they still want to grow. And this is a good time for them to expand because spaces have availed a little bit, rents have leveled, some areas they've gone down.
And that's a question.
And they could take a
You
little
know,
bit
there was
advantage of
there
that.
was a survey which I wrote an article recently. It's being published next week, saying that certain landlords or retail landlords have reduced rents and have increased concessions. Have you seen that?
It depends.
I know I don't want to say that in front of you.
It depends where.
We haven't.
It depends where. Things tightened up dramatically in the last 12 months. I don't know what's going on right now. We'll see. But it depends where. I mean, there's so much tourism in New York, in Manhattan in particular, that the high streets with tourism, Fifth Avenue, Broadway and Soho, Herald Square, those rents are
Michael,
Hi.
we're a developer, so we're taking something and creating. We're not buying retail condos, and we actually don't really sell it. But the one question we hear every time we go in with a piece of property to do a center or do a project is, why do we need another center? And my answer really is, if we're going to build, whether it be a Home Depot or Costco or a Target or anything that we do build, like the Arches, we're not doing it without doing market studies. We're not doing it, and the stores aren't going to commit their credits to do it without market studies and a knowledge of where we fit, and it's an infill store or it's a new location. And when they say, well, what are you going to do? And the store's going to start to do $80, $100 million a year. There's a need for it. It's not, why do you need another one? People aren't willing to go where that store exists.
Look, let's look at some of the stores at the Arches. You have a Christmas tree shop, which is the first time in Long Island. Now you have one in Staten Island also.
Correct.
You were saying, that's a Bed Bath and Beyond store, but that's something new and it's doing very well. In addition, you have a Neiman's off market.
Correct.
Which is, Neiman's would love. Neiman's doesn't want to be here because they own Bergdorf Goodman's, but the off market has become big. You also have a Saks or Fifth.
Right.
So there is a large number of off price places that the value that people are looking at. The one who's really hurting today is the Filene Sims situation, but. Otherwise, I mean, Marshalls, TJ Maxx, they're just expanding.
Exactly.
I mean, as Scott Reckless said to me a couple weeks ago when he bought 625th Avenue, he said, look, he didn't even realize that TJ Maxx and Marshalls were the same stores in his shopping center. I said, they mint money.
They're good.
I mean,
they're good.
they're fantastic stores, and
They're good. They're a
they
great
operate.
company.
But there are other new stores. I mean, people aren't aware there's Aldi. Which is the other brother of the Trader Joe's boys. That's
correct.
Right?
The
Albricks. The Albricks have opened up in Vornado Shopping Center in Queens.
Regal Park.
In Regal Park, and I wouldn't be. I think they're out in Long Island now. Also, the Aldi.
Yes,
They
they've
opened
built the one
in Bayshore.
Bayshore.
Right. So so you have that, and every time
Value also.
Right. Their value. I mean, Aldi is known that they only have 99% of their products are their own brand. I mean, they don't take anything but their own brand. And when they have
private label.
okay, they private label, and when they have private label, they can make a different profit.
Margins.
And if you look at, we were joking on the show that Ben was on the week before, talking about the food stores. I mean, doesn't matter how many Whole Foods open, they continue to do well. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can't get into a Trader Joe's in Manhattan. I mean, they're just, New York City continues to be under retail. And that's why investors,
Well, I mean, the other thing that people have come to realize about Manhattan retail in particular is that this island continues to get taller and it never gets any wider. And every time it gets taller, that's another shopper for the same exact amount of grade level retail.
so here's my only problem, okay? It's not Manhattan. You go to Brooklyn, and Williamsburg is hot as hell. People are buying, and retail is going to do well if you could get that. The big problem is how many spaces could be on Bedford Avenue.
Mostly small stores there.
But I hear there's a big CVS.
It adds to the
opening up.
charm.
Right. But downtown Brooklyn, where there's a lot of housing, on Flatbush Avenue, there's no great
Well,
retail.
Michael, there's a lot more housing than there used to be. I wouldn't say that in an absolute sense there's a lot of housing.
There's
There's the Avalon building,
1900,
which is
no,
residential, and
1,955 units went up there.
There's a lot of residential density.
There's a lot of residential density,
Well,
but there's no real
Atlantic Center-
supermarkets.
Atlantic Center and Atlantic Terminal, there's a Pathmark there. And there's a Whole Foods
And
that
there's also Brooklyn Fair
is going into
on Livingston,
construction.
or on State or Livingston.
Whole
Pardon me?
Foods made a deal in downtown Brooklyn.
In downtown
Yeah,
Brooklyn.
they took an industrial building.
Oh, so they're not in the Gowanus.
It's by the Gowanus. It's kind of through the Gowanus Canal.
So that's
They started construction.
So how do since we're in the fourth quarter of 2011, how do you foresee the retail environment next year?
Eddie, you're much better.
No, we go around the
I
room.
am.
We're starting with you, Ripka. Come on.
Well, I'm an optimist by nature.
Okay.
So I'm not kidding myself about what's going on in the world. But when I wake up in the morning, I have ideas. I try and make them happen. And sometimes they do. And that's a good day for everyone.
Banker.
So
Excuse me, we will continue to lend to the sector because we're going to focus on sponsorship and we're going to focus on excellent locations, and we like the sector. We think that it's a good place to put our money.
Developer.
We're going to focus on what we have, and we don't do a lot of land banking, and we're looking for opportunities where we fill a niche. We've been fortunate in the last 5 years to do things that were a little different than cookie cutter, and we're looking at new potential tenants to bring into a marketplace where they've never been before.
Last, you got 10 seconds.
I think institutions are going to continue to look at retail in desirable locations as a welcome respite from the very volatile equity markets.
I'd like to thank Will Silverman, Eddie Blumenfeld, Ben Stacks, and Peter Ripka. See you next week.
Major support for these broadcasts is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, All Nation Renovation, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, Chelsea Lighting, Inc., Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Goldman Properties, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Corming Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Muss Development, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, Triangle Equities, The Wickoff Group, Urban American.